As usual, before beginning today's video, I would like to thank all the members to the channel. Thank you so much for supporting this channel financially, and I appreciate every one of you guys. In case you guys do not know, you guys can actually join the Zibo Gaming membership page by clicking on the join button and then selecting the respective perks that suits your need as well as financial capabilities. So do head down to the join button if you want to support this channel as well. So just a few months back, I actually mentioned that Tinia actually has a sister within Guardian Tales itself. So it's really happy to see Parvati coming into life because it shows that the developers remember to fill up the stories of their characters, as Tinia's stories has been there since the release of the game itself, and this means that Parvati only came roughly 1 year plus after the release of Tinia. So this gives me hope for other future characters that are mentioned within the stories of our existing characters in Guardian Tales. And without further ado, let us look at how worthy is model employee Parvati potentially. So Parvati is the model employee of the unofficial post-facto cleanup team for Camazon, which is basically the assassin group in Camazon which removes threats as well as oppositions to the company. She believed getting employed at the famous Camazon meant living an ordinary life, so she kept on applying, but the world wasn't her oyster, and after being rejected many times, she finally got hired through a recommendation to a department that suited her skill sets. Her only hobby is seeking out new local delicacies whenever she moves into a new town for her mission, and her one wish for her little sister Tinia is for her to live an ordinary life such as herself. So Parvati's stats ranking based on level 83 heroes are 41st in terms of attack, 44th in terms of HP, 20th in terms of defense with a 5% crit chance. So her party buff is crit chance plus 40%, and she has a weapon skill regen speed of plus 6%. Overall, her stats are pretty mediocre, and in a way it will reflect in her kit later on as I'll talk more about it, but her lack of attack as well as slightly weaker defensive capabilities on paper doesn't really look good on first impression. However, do take note that she's a gauntlet user, so gauntlet provide additional defenses which sort of beef her up, but that doesn't solve her lack of damage output, which I'll talk more about later. So her normal attack is Command's Task. So the first part is Speedy Precision, where she'll just chase after the enemy to whip them, and this attack can't pass through walls nor terrains. So one thing that I'd like to point out for this attack is that there is supposedly an iframe when she jumps towards the target, but the whole jump, whip and continuously whip action is really slow, which is why I say that her damage output is really low, because her attack isn't really the best, and every single whip that you hit the target with doesn't deal that much of a damage, and her main bulk of the damage will only come after her chain skill, which we will look at it later. But yeah, just take note that this alone is not gonna like do a lot of damage, and if you have sufficient stat, maybe you could make her work, but even at the highest rankings for KR Arena, I don't see a lot of pros using her. And her secondary ability, Customer Service, allows her to install a wire which deals damage to the enemies. But the thing about this wire is that it's a bit hard to control the direction whereby the wire will be installed, so it's not a very practical skill in a lot of situations, except for one game mode which I think can work for most of the time, and that is none other than Colosseum itself. Because even within Arena itself, I usually would think that I hit my opponent with the wire, but I don't, right? So you need to get really close to make sure everything actually hits, which is kind of detrimental because of how her kit works and how frail, or rather how not tanky she is compared to the many other tanky units out there. Her chain skill is Task Completion, so it's a very straightforward skill, but one very interesting thing about this Task Completion is that she will actually jump to the target that got chained from a really far position, and she will actually teleport back to the original position that you're standing. So you can actually use this to reposition her in certain scenarios, but I think the most important part of her chain skill is to deal damage as well as increase her attack after using the chain skill itself. Her special ability, Process Optimization, allows her to reduce target weapon skill regen speed by 30% for 1 second whenever she hits the target. So as long as she's hitting the target with her normal attack or hitting the target with her wires, she's able to reduce their weapon skill regen speed. She's also able to increase her attack whenever she throws out her wires. So overall, her kit itself, you guys can see that she kind of want to right click the opponent to reduce their weapon skill regen speed and throw out her weapon skill as fast as possible, and then chain them and get attack boost and then deal even more damage to them. So that's basically how she works. But in actual fact, I think her right click or her normal attack capacity isn't really the best, right? You guys will realize from the footages later, she attacks really slowly. So it's kind of counterintuitive. Like, you kind of want to slap into your opponent and you don't really want to fight them head on at the same time. So it's kind of weird and I don't really like it personally. Okay, so one thing that I forgot to mention earlier was that her normal attack, or rather her AI, actually targets the furthest enemy away from her. So overall, I think she's sort of like a mini range killer, right? She goes after the backline, goes after the range attackers, goes after the support, and this exclusive weapon increases the wire's DPS as well as allow her to install the wire closest to the target as well as the nearest enemy. So I believe this affects the aiming mechanics, but I'm not too sure about the details on this one. So if there's anybody who figure out, feel free to share with me in the comment section below. And other than that, when her wires actually hit the target, it will also lower the target's normal attack by 20% for 3 seconds. So overall, her kit itself relies a lot on her hitting her wire to boost her attack, to reduce the enemy's attack, and then continuously allow her to whip into the enemies itself. Her exclusive weapon skill, Risk Elimination, allows her to do 235% DPS with a pretty low regen time of 8.3 seconds. So if you consider the fact that she has quite a bit of weapon skill regen speed in her kit, she's able to spam out her skill faster than the opponent under most situations. So you'll need 2 to 3 weapon skill in order to fully crowd control your enemies within the arena itself. Now, in terms of the Colosseum setting, I think Parvati is a fully feasible unit, right? Her kit allows her to chase after the backline, to eliminate key targets before they can use their skills or use their chains, and in general, a really good unit such as Sohi within the Colosseum itself, because it forces repositioning of the range unit and it forces the enemy's formation to break up. However, no matter how good Parvati is, I think the melee archetype within Colosseum isn't really the most top tier one, because melee is just countered by tanks, countered by future Princess CC. So overall, the melee archetype with Parvati is usable, but not super duper top tier. However, sometimes if you notice Parvati chasing after the backline and then killing them before they can actually use their weapon skill, the feeling is pretty amazing. So I'll let you guys see some of the Colosseum matches that I have, and I think in all honesty, Parvati is a very good Colosseum hero if you want to build a mini team around her. So I think Parvati in terms of the arena is an okay unit as well, right? Crit hit chance in melee team is a thing right now. Like you run Carol, you run Hana, so Parvati fits well in the melee crit team. But in all honesty, I think Parvati fits much better with HP and defense, because being a weapon skill reliant unit, you want to be able to survive until you're able to chain your enemy. So having 2 defensive buff is probably the best option for her, and overall I'll say that she's a okay arena unit, also not the top tier, but a usable one at that as well. And I actually uploaded 2 videos with regards to her arena performance, so if you guys want to have a gauge of how she'll perform within the arena, feel free to visit the links on the card above as well as the description below for her arena videos. I'm not going to showcase too much within the video today, so let us move on to the next part of the video. So in terms of the PvE aspect, at the current stage of the game, I'll give her probably a high A tier or maybe a mid A tier unit, because you can put her in fire teams, right, with a fire gauntlet with the crit chance buff, but she's not really that strong in earth teams, because the earth units that are stronger for it, they are in the range spectrum, right? You have Mariel, you have Kamel, you have Rue. They all hit really hard. You have Tina as well, and that is a super duper awesome Earth raid team there. And for the melee side, you only have Parvati on the melee unit and probably Aleph, which does nothing in guild raids. So overall, not that fantastic for raid, but definitely can fit her in most other melee teams because she also doesn't provide any resistance down, so she's probably not the best raid unit out there. And in terms of team building, her AI is kind of weird, so if you're not using her as the main unit, she's gonna dive into the enemies. She's very similar to the old Vishuvek, so if you look at it from that aspect, I think she's not that amazing. So I guess I'll just rate her as an A tier, probably a low A tier at that. And yeah, that's pretty much my opinion for PvE. There's really nothing much special about her because she doesn't hit a lot of enemies altogether. She has the old Vishuvek mechanic, which causes her to die if she's not tanky enough. And her weapon skill regen speed just isn't as good against unit with no weapon skill itself. Below are some reasons to pull or invest in Parvati, the model employee. So how worthy is Parvati potentially? In all honesty, she's probably one of the least worthy Earth units in a very long time due to how powerful the archetype is in general. So most of the Earth units, they can either do a lot of game modes or they're just really good at a specific one. And for Parvati, her best game mode is probably Colosseum. And even in that, she's not that good because melee is just not the best for Colosseum in general due to AI reasons, due to stats reasons, due to positioning reasons. So that is her limiting factor. But I'll say that she's kind of niche. In terms of arena itself, she can definitely be used, but yeah, results may vary based on your personal experience and your stats, right? So that's my personal take for Parvati, a very mediocre unit in general. And if you combine that with the fact that the exclusive collab units, they're actually coming, and if you're not extremely wealthy for gems, then I guess you should save up for the collab unit instead. So yeah, Parvati is a skippable unit in general. However, if you do want to give her a try, right, feel free to pull for her. There's a mini mileage event with a 5 mileage ticket for every 20 summons, so that's that going for Parvati. But yeah, I strongly won't recommend newcomers to pull for her. And if you have a lot of melee units and you want to have more melee units for your arenas, or you just love Earth element in general, then go ahead and pull for her. That's it for this video. Let me know down in the comment section below whether or not you will pull for her when she's officially released on the global server. And thank you very much for watching. Do remember to like and subscribe to see more content from this channel. I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.